I wanted to be more male presenting, and I wanted to be, I guess, more truthful to who I was.
I was told I'm a lesbian because I was read as a cis woman, right? So being read as a cis woman, being attracted to women, not being allowed to explore my gender expression, I was put in a box.
I could still be gay even if I'm trans. I was hesitant to come out and say that to people besides the one friend I confided in.
You're taking care of your body. For whatever needs your body has, you're taking care of it and taking steps to make sure that you're healthy. And that to me means that you're safe.
Gender is fluid, and masculinity comes in all shapes, sizes, and degrees. But how do health, sexuality, and safety come into play when you live your masculine truth? How do you be the man or masculine person you are while still taking care of your body and making all the right decisions when there are so many decisions to be made? The New York City Department of Health asked Callen-Lorde to find out all of this and more. We took 13 trans men and transmasculine people, 2 who are best friends and 2 with their partners, sat them down on our little red couch and asked, what does it mean to be transmasculine and healthy? I'm Devin Lowe, and on this first episode of Transmasculine and Healthy, we're going to explore the basics. What does it mean to be a transmasculine person? And just how diverse is our community? Some would say it starts with gender identity, and as you'll see, our cast uses different terms to describe themselves.
Gender identity is basically the gender you feel on the inside. So everybody's got a gender identity. It's not something that only trans people have, but it is something that trans people usually think about more than cisgender people or non-transgender people do. So it's basically the gender you feel on the inside, which may or may not match the gender that you were assigned at birth. And people come to their gender identity at all sorts of different times. Some people come to it when they think, hey, the way I'm, the way people are addressing me, or the names I'm being called, or the pronouns I'm being called, don't feel like how I feel on the inside, and that's your gender identity. Or it could be later on in life, they start to feel that kind of mismatch of what's on the inside and what they've been told they are, or what they were assigned at birth.
Now, as far as gender goes, there's many genders. And when I say genders, I'm talking about more than 2, and blows people's minds. Mind blown. But yeah, more than 2 genders. It's not just man and woman. You can be both. You can be many genders. You can be the gender of the chair today, if that's what you want to, like, it's up to you.
I was a straight cisgender woman for a really long time. I was socialized that way. I didn't question it once. I knew something was off, but I didn't question it once. Like, it's just the way it was. And I identified as a lesbian, and I identified kind of as a, like, I don't care for a minute, and I, identified as a straight heterosexual man, and now I identify as a queer trans guy.
I feel like a lot of trans people have this experience where their stuff just like changes a lot. And mine changed in like a pretty typical like trans dude type of fashion, where like when I was like pretty young, I was like pretty much like only hooking up with girls, and then I was like, I'm gay, I'm a fag, like I'm gonna be gay forever, and I'm only gonna be gay men. And then I was like, well,
I put it like this. Labels define some and confine others. When I say I'm a trans man, I'm defining myself. When a cis person walks up to me and says, no, you're really just a girl, they're confining me.
At first I was confused because I didn't know between butch and trans men. But then I came to realize being trans man is like more masculine. And to me it was like a great experience, and I could live who I am and not pretending something that I'm not.
I didn't realize that like being a trans guy was like a thing that was possible. Like all of the media about trans people had been about like trans women. And I had sort of done that like, I don't know, I feel like this is like this sort of like standard, like, or like very typical trans guy narrative where it's like I was a butch lesbian first and that like didn't really fit. Also, I like kind of had crushes on guys sometimes, so like, am I a bad butch? Like, am I like doing this right? Like, this rubber mask fits poorly, you know? Like,
it's been a weird stages of how I've identified or how I've seen myself. Also, sometimes in response to how other people see me. I mean, I think it's when it started was when I was a small person running around. I thought I was a boy. It was just a very normal. When I found out, I did not find out I was female until I was like 10 or 11.
Actually, one of the reasons why I moved from upstate New York to New York City was so I could find other lesbians. So, you know, and I did just that. I found other lesbians, and I lived that life for very, very long. And I didn't even know about I did not know what the T in LGBT was. I just never even looked into it. And when I finally discovered what it was, I felt like that was me before I even knew what it was. I said, wow, that's kind of me.
Actually, it's when I started hanging out in the pier and the gay lesbian center and everything else, and then I've seen ads for trans men's group and whatever. And when I started researching it, whatever, and I finally went to a Transmasculine group, I actually found out that's who I was. So it's no more lesbian, butch, or whatever.
I remember sitting on the kitchen floor, then laying on the kitchen floor because I was beside myself, having a little bit of a crying fit, that I was going to look like my mother and not my father. I couldn't understand. I was like, well, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
To me, it was very clear from very, very early on. I mean, first of all, when I was in Israel in elementary school and throughout junior high, I made no secret about it. I already chose my boy name when I was in 4th grade. I asked my friends to speak to me in male and male pronouns. In Hebrew, there is a very big difference between male and female in the language, because it's in everything. It's not just he, his, or it's when you speak in first person, there's difference in genders. So I literally asked people to speak to me in male pronouns at a very young age.
When I think about the diversity of gender identity and expression, I think one thing that gets kind of left out of the conversation a lot are folks who are intersex. And I'm an intersex person, and that's something that has kind of been the undercurrent throughout my entire life, even though I didn't find out I was intersex until I was in my late 20s. My intersex condition impacted my sexual development as a teen and an adolescent, and certainly impacted my 20s and beyond, and even to this day.
I mostly say two-spirit, but I'm spectrum, trans-esque, masculine. You know, I'm both. I'm a boy and a girl. I'm that happy gray area, so there is no bathroom for me.
Gender identity is a complex thing. So far, you've heard terms like intersex, male, trans male, and two-spirit. These terms can be fluid for some and specific for others. Check out www.teachingtransgender.org's The Teaching Transgender Toolkit and GLAD's glossary of terms at www.glad.org/reference/transgender to find out more information on terminology and to keep learning more. And now that we've got a taste of just how diverse our community really is, what happens when we throw sexuality and orientation into the mix? Does gender identity really determine sexual orientation?
I try to explain to people that the same way cis people get to come in varieties, even LGBT, trans people can too.
The sexual orientation is about who you're attracted to and who you want to sleep with, whether that be any gender. I was hospitalized once, and I had a psychiatrist tell me, you know, you can be into guys and still be a girl. Why are you making life more complicated for yourself?
A trans man's a trans man, he's gay. You don't tell him he should have just stayed a woman to date men, because those two don't have anything to do with each other. Gender identity, gender expression is not the same, you know, in your sexual orientation.
I think the concept that there's rules and regulations to sexuality and gender are insane.
So there's a variety of working parts to who a person is, right? So there's the gender that you wear and the gender that you show to people. And then there's like the gender that's like inside, that like is the core of who you are. Neither of those two things have to do with who you fuck or, you know, who you're attracted to.
Yeah, I mean, attraction, what is it? Gender is a circle, and how many points are there in a circle? An infinite amount.
There's no, every day I can change my mind. Every single day, during the day.
It is fluid. If you today are identifying as a straight male, that's your business. Tomorrow you're bisexual, that's also your business.
In our communities, people of color, Black folks, people who have been disempowered in many different ways, you don't often get to have choices about, you know, where you're gonna sleep at night necessarily, right? So choosing things like gender and your sexuality might feel really difficult for a lot of people to access.
I don't think that a man is supposed to have just sex with a female. I don't think it has to just be one at a time. And I don't think there has to be, like, sex is already hard enough. And, you know, like what affects your sexuality, what affects your mind, what turns you on. How can there be rules and regulations? How can there be rules and regulations to like how I feel in my body? How can somebody know?
I struggled a lot with the idea of being gay and trans when I was in my early stages of transition, because I thought if I was trans, I had to be into girls. It just didn't compute that there was a separation between gender and sexuality. Like, being gay was reserved for, you know, cisgendered men. And I actually had a friend tell me, you know, take away the trans aspect, you're a guy. You're saying you're not allowed to be interested in guys. And something just clicked. And I was like, it's just that simple. I'm not a trans guy, I'm a guy. And guys are allowed to be into what they're into. And I'm into masculinity.
Now that's the truth. Getting comfortable with your sexual orientation isn't always easy. But as a transmasculine person, you have the right to be attracted to anyone and any gender. A transmasculine person is allowed to be as fluid in their sexual orientation as they are in their gender identity. Another identity that's often used in the community is queer. And it isn't always specific to just sex.
I am a trans man and I identify as queer. So being queer is my sexuality, right? And I always say that queerness is my sexuality and not that I'm heterosexual. It's because sexual identity, you know, for me as an LGBT person has been so much more than just sexual orientation, right? As LGBT people who are part of this community, who are part of this fight, who are constantly like up against these like really like oppressive, you know, so much oppression and resistance, and how we always have to like turn inward. We're constantly just, you know, fighting for our right to exist and to be loved. My sexual orientation means more than who I lay with.
Queer to some is identity, and queer to some is a sexual orientation. So putting in pansexual, I don't really ID as that, but for the people, you know.
I identify as queer because it's important to me to be queer, and that the sex that I have is queer regardless of who is there. It's queer when it's by myself.
Right, I like specifically queer women, like not lesbian women, not straight women. I specifically like queer, feminine, identified women, like this specimen right here, you know. So for me, that's what queerness means, you know, to me. So it's more than just my sexuality. It's about my community.
Queer for me means just being open to liking people of any gender, looking at gender fluidly, like a non-binary way of looking at everything. I think it's like it's a orientation for me, but it is an identity too.
I felt like going out with men was something that I felt like I had to do, like, to prove my queerness in a way. Like, once I got read as male, like, pretty standardly, and, like, with my partners were read as, like, this, like, heterosexual couple in public, like, that was very disconcerting for me, for somebody who had been, like, very queer and is still very queer, to be sort of, like, invisibilized in that way.
You know, I always say that I have absolutely no want to like be heterosexual, or to like, out in the streets people see us and they see a heterosexual couple, and we are so far from that. We are so very queer, and we could go into heterosexual community and do all these things and do that, but we don't want to, because there's just something about being queer to me that is very freeing. I love the community that I've created for myself. I love the community that we're creating together. So my sexuality is very much about that.
Also, I want to, for me, and this isn't for everyone that's queer, I feel like being part of a queer community for me, calling myself queer, I think what's important component of it to me is there's an element of like anti-oppression at play for me. It's not only being queer, but it's being like anti-racist and being feminist and being anti-capitalist, and it's understanding like humanity, and I don't know, it just kind of, it's something that I like claiming. And also for me, and this is more personal, I come from a family who uses the word queer in a really bad way. And it's just another way that I can tell them to go fuck themselves. Honestly.
So even though they're not comparative, but I often use this analogy. Like, how I'm Trinidadian, born in Trinidad, I grew up in Canada, so I might identify as like Trinidadian Canadian. I live in New York, but I identify as Black, right? Mm-hmm. And Black is more than just like my ethnicity, it's also like a cultural term, right? I, as a Black person, share cultural experiences with you as a Black person, even though we've never grown up in the same capacity, right. And so when I talk about queerness, you might identify as like a lesbian, and that's maybe close to like your ethnicity, but queer is more like the culture. Yeah. It's more of like a shared cultural experience that we're all having that might show up in different ways at different times.
The queer community is just that. A community. It can provide safety and connection for many people, including those who identify within the transmasculine spectrum, especially in the face of phobia and the many isms of the world. So, what do we need as transmasculine people to feel safer in the larger world? What do we need in order to create more tolerance and to live healthier lives?
I think we all are making a lot of sacrifices as far as trans people go to live our truth. We sacrifice our health. We sacrifice the people that birthed us. We sacrifice family, loved ones, people that have known us forever. We sacrifice our jobs. We sacrifice our lives, pretty much.
The reason I feel that a lot of people are depressed is because they feel our family ignoring them. They feel like they don't belong. And a lot of trans men are not comfortable. We're like, being a trans man, you gotta live for who you are. Meaning you might lose family members, you might lose friends. But I feel this is who you are, it's worth. A lot of people are depressed because they don't know how to handle it.
I think there's pressure from the straight community. I think there's pressure from the gay community, trans community.
Because what does it matter if you're straight or you're gay? What does it matter if you're cis or you're trans? Do you not deserve to not live in poverty? Do you not deserve, we all deserve to be healthy human beings at the end of the day. It goes back to respect. Like, people are pushing like tolerance and acceptance, and I'm like, whoa, we gotta tolerate humans? Like, it's ridiculous if you really look at the way they're pushing the whole LGBT thing, like trying like we're anomalies and you gotta embrace. We ain't dragons coming around here like spraying fire at people. Like, we're literally human beings that want to live the same life as the normals.
That's exactly, I was texting with my mother this morning, and she said, but I was there when you were born. And I said, but you're not me. You're not inside my body. So how can you know what I'm feeling? She's convinced she can say, no. You're a girl, you're straight, you're this, you're that. Like those words don't even make sense to me. They don't even make sense. And I just feel like two-spirit's a great word, but still, it's bigger than that.
Education would lead to less discrimination in my life, in everyone's life, to be honest. I think the main reason people are discriminated against is because they don't understand.
And it's just all a giant gray area. And I think people just need to like chill out and not worry what your neighbor's feeling, thinking, who they think they are.
Affirmation and support for trans people means just that. Means, you know, having people in your life who are going to not only respect you for the gender that you identify as, but are going to they're going to respect it, they're going to support it, and they're going to celebrate it too. You know, it's just not enough for you to be like, I'm cool with you. Okay, you're he or you're she, and I'm cool with you. No, I want you to be like, yeah, look how you are. You know, I think that's what we need. We need cheerleaders. You know, I think in trans community, we need cheerleaders. We need people to tell us that, you know, that we are included and that we are beautiful and that we are loved for exactly who we are and supporting us on that journey, you know?
Across the board, the level of sacrifice is on like 100. That's why when people say brave and courage, it does take bravery and courage. I don't like people call me that because it's like, no, I'm just trying to survive, literally. But it does take bravery to wake up every day and present as yourself, even though you're breaking literally every rule society set up. And does take courage to put your health at risk, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's gonna happen, you know? And here you are just hoping for the best.
Hoping for the best can get you through hard times. As my man Eli puts it, we sacrifice a lot to live our truth. But there are also resources out there. Hope doesn't have to be the only thing getting you through. Check out the New York City Department of Health's Pocket Guide for trans men, transmasculine people, and places like Callen-Lorde for additional resources and help with transitioning. You can even hit up the website at www.callen-lorde.org/transhealth. And of course, don't forget to check out the rest of the Transmasculine and Healthy series, where we'll be talking about everything from testosterone, to binding, to HIV, to dating. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more information. We'll see you there.